Welcome to the Live to Lift Up podcast. This is a storytelling space inspired by the life, the lessons, and the legacy of Sandy Mohonathan. Today, I'm delighted to welcome with us and into the studio, Naik. Lee is not just the face and the leader at TransUnion Africa, but deeper to that, he is Sandy Mohonathan's other son. And she saw in Lee the leader way before any title could acknowledge and share it to be so. Hi, Lee. How are you doing?
Hi, sister. It's good to be here, and it's good to be able to talk about mom and her legacy and what she meant to all of us.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. And really grateful for you making the time to be here today. This is ultra special, and I'm really touched that you leaned in to share your story and your journey and many pearls of wisdom. I have no doubt that are going to come from this conversation with not just myself, but every listener that I know will make the time and the effort to tune into today's episode at least. So thank you. So before I begin to share with our listeners and yourself why we had selected the name Lift Up, and it's a very special acronym based on the values, the lessons, and the life that mom not just spoke about, but lived authentically and consistently. The L stands for love unconditionally, and we know that to the depths of her core. We felt that, we experienced it. I is inspired through kindness because it's only through kindness that we can really touch and make a difference at the core. The F is foster growth, to leave everything that we encounter better than how we found it. And that's based on deeper listening of our fellow human being. The T is together we rise, because it is only as a collective that we can do what we are called here to do. The U is universal, because that woman, Sandy Mohonathan, was a universal global citizen, right? Every corner far reaching of this planet. And the P is for passion, because what is life without passion, right? In your purpose. So without further ado, I'm going to get right into this, right? And I'm going to share with our audience. I call you Anna, which is big brother, right? But for the purposes of this conversation, the Lee Naik that started off a professional career that I don't really know if you saw coming or anticipated, but could you please share with us how, where, and when did you meet mom?
Well, so our journey started back in 1997. I was actually at the University of Natal back in there, but a long, long time ago. And I get a scholarship with a large telco organization in South Africa. It so happened that your dad used to work at this very same organization back then. And it's quite interesting that as I was wrapping up my 3 year degree in computer science at the University of Natal in Durban, South Africa, I had the opportunity to do vacation work at this organization. And I realized after having fought the battles of breaking out of my tough upbringing, getting the scholarship, actually, I didn't like the work that I was doing on vacation. And in itself, that was a trigger to say, there must be something more. And as you'd remember, at most universities, there's a company roadshow as you start to wrap up your year to promote people joining their organizations, almost you selling your company to the universities. And for us as young students, we really wanted, exposure to companies, potentially to see what the company was about, and maybe to get free food or free gadgets. And it so happened that back then, there was a company called Anderson Consulting, which you may remember is the forerunner to what became Accenture. And so we went into this large hall in this Shepston building at the University of Natal, and we were in awe by this really good presentation team presenting in their fancy suits about, the work they did and the impact they made. And then I met this young woman because she was really quite young back then. She had just started her own journey at Anderson Consulting. And here she was, part of the HR department, but presenting about what it meant to have this life and journey with Anderson Consulting. And what I remember most about mom was that she was real. She's someone I could relate to with very, very similar upbringings. We both grew up in Chatsworth and Durban, and she came across as real. So whatever concerns or apprehensions I had about the other opportunity that I had on my plate, which is almost a guaranteed thing, mom had done a really good job selling this opportunity. And so for many of these conversations, you go into a room, you leave the room, but actually, I was convinced that I had to join Anderson Consulting. But I had this big, big, like boulder around my neck that said I had a scholarship that I owed somebody money for, right? And so I decided to be brave and I walked down this auditorium floor all the way to the bottom. And then I stood in line to meet Sandy and other leaders there. And I said to Sandy, listen, I really like what you guys are proposing. Like, I really like it. I love this, going overseas. I'd never left my home before. I'd never taken a flight before. This is all new to me. And yet, Amazon is offering me the world on a silver platter to travel overseas every year, doing different projects, working with cool people. It sounded amazing. But I had these boulders around my neck. And the boulder was the fact that I owed somebody a lot of money for having paid me a scholarship. And true to form, Sandy that we know knew today, and Norman knew then as the same person, she very calmly said to me, we're going to do interviews on campus today. You should come. If you are what we need, we will sort that out. Don't worry about it. And so she gave me that initial hope. And so Sandy, in her earliest form, wasn't the global leader that we knew before mom passed. Sandy Mohonathan was somebody that was still starting her own journey in Anderson. And on that very first day, maybe she saw something in me that said, hey, you should take a chance on us, right? And that's where I met mom in her early days supporting recruiting.
That's quite a story, right? And as you share, 1997 is a long time ago.
Definitely.
So
Right.
sharing that very heartfelt moment of the Sandy that we knew um, today, or fast track to 2025, was always the human that led with heart. You felt it. She gave you hope. She lifted you up from that very first instance and interaction. I think that's something so profound to have stuck with you, and it's such a clear story. I mean, I would have loved to be a fly on the wall to see what a young Lee was like, tropping down the passageways and having a look. Right. So I'm gonna lead from there with the next point to raise in love, because that sounds like a very love, heartfelt, centered first instance. Mom had a very unique, rare kind of unconditional love, and you shared that, right? It was heartfelt from that very first engagement back in 1997, and that rare kind of love, it wasn't smothering, but it's strengthened. It finds its way into every part of your being, to the very core, where it makes you hope and believe in yourself like nothing else. So I think my next question to you, Anna, my big brother, is how do you feel that mom showed you unconditional love, in whether it was how she cared, guided, forgave, or just showed up for you?
Well, that's a really good question. And I think the one thing that I've got so many stories, but I could say that in all the time I've known mom, she's been so consistent into who she is. And yes, we may jump around in the conversation, but I'll tell you a few things that I remember starkly about mom. I remember once having a conversation with her in the office about how tough things were.
Mm.
And she says, Lee, look at my windowsill. And there's this little book she had. It was called Sandy's Book of Values, right? And so if you were not sure who Sandy was, she'd say, open up my book, look at what I do, look at what I am, look at who I am. This job doesn't define me. What I just say at the outset is the Sandy that I knew, thousands and thousands of people knew the exact same Sandy. And she had enough space in her heart, in her mind, in her day to always make time. Probably the biggest criticism of Sandy, she never said no to any of us. So, how do I think about Sandy and the kindness and love that she brought to me? Well, it's a very personal thing, but when I started my journey working with Anderson, I come from quite a poor family, and we actually could not afford to do many things when I was growing up in Chatsworth, and certainly leaving everything I knew behind, my family, to come to Johannesburg. I had even less, not enough to pay rent for a house or to have a car. And, my other brother, your brother, Brett Mohonathan, and I, we always have this fight about how Sandy, who wasn't my direct family, saw something in me to say, listen, you don't have a house, come and stay with my family, right? And it's quite funny, but years later, Brett and I were having a conversation as to why his mom gave up his room for this other brother. And so, as you know, we've been having the fight as to who's the favorite brother for some decades now. But I would say the first sign of trueness in Sandy was the love she showed to say, I can see the journey that this young man is working. I was 20 years old, to the point where she said to her husband, Claude, to you and to your brother, this young man, I see something. Maybe you didn't see it, maybe Claude didn't see it. But she said from her heart, we got to find a way to make space for him. And that kind of kindness is what I've seen throughout my journey with Sandy. And it's quite interesting. Throughout the world, there's a phenomenon that says be kind. And in many places, whether it's Dubai or Los Angeles or New York or Johannesburg, there are these big statues that say be kind. And mom and I have a few photographs across the years. Hopefully, I can share it with your audience of mom and I standing next to Be Kind, because mom was Be Kind personified. She was always seeing the very best in you. And I can tell you that she made the time to see the best in me. Maybe I didn't see it, Danielle, but she saw it. And for me, the man I am today, she helped me get here.
Oh, you have me tearing here. But that is such a, I felt that because not only to the truest sense of it was tough love, she saw through everything, but it was still love. And the philosophy, the life philosophy and sentiment of be kind, we would absolutely love to see as many of those pictures that you are willing to share as possible. So yes, please. Was really something that she lived by. Thank you. That was beautiful. Thank you for sharing that memory with us. And we have fond memories of back in the day of sharing a household with you, which is very precious to all of us. So we're grateful for mom opening the home and heart and space. Um, that love of being so full and passionate, and as the P in Lift Up shares, it's passion. Um, extends to that belief that she saw in you, opening up the space, the trust that was built, the foundation, the relationship that developed and blossomed, and being our other sibling. I mean, I suppose now with mom not being physically around, how do you continue to draw on that kind of strength and love in your personal and professional capacity?
It's a really interesting question. And, it's very difficult to forget Sandy Mohonathan. Sandy had this famous saying that she said, memories are nice, but photographs are better. So throughout our timelines on Facebook or Instagram, you have something popping up. And it's so interesting, Danielle, that sometimes when you have a bad day, because you do have bad days, and you're looking for something, and here's Sandy popping up. And throughout our time together in whatever we did, and we've got so many times I can think of where I was going through something and I'd call mom or I'd speak to mom or I'd WhatsApp mom or we'd gossip about something. And I think back to what she'd say then. As a leader that she helped create, oh, I must actually find a photograph for you of myself, William Mzimba, and Vukani Mzati, who is now the CEO of Microsoft. I remember the three of us standing with mom under a big tent at some convention. And mom said to the three of us, I made the three of you CEOs, right? So mom was very humble in her impact. Her impact could be felt. And when I say the impact could be felt, it's there to be seen. So I think about how do I live my life now? I've had the blessing and the privilege of being coached and mentored and beaten up sometimes to get back onto that path. You know that, I know that, we've been through that journey. So we've got the physical memories popping up, but we've got the real memories where you think about when I was in that position, what would mom say to me? And I've had the blessing of having had done this for close on 28 years of having mom in my corner. And that's powerful. That's powerful from, whether it's like, should I apply for this job to unstuck? What should I do? And it's many people don't know this, but when mom had passed, the number of people that reached out to see how I was doing because they knew we had this deeper connection. I could not fly via Dubai and not stop and talk to mom and spend time with her and dad. So the connection was always there. But to your question, I've had the blessing of 28 years of memories. What to do when things are bad or things are good. What to do when you're thinking about a career change. What to do when you're confronted with challenges. I think mom was an oracle. She was someone that knew so much about so many things. You would not know this about mom unless you got to know her. But for those of us had the privilege and the benefit of knowing Sandy Mohonathan, we can tell you what it is to be groomed and to be byproducts or products really of what she was able to deliver in her time. So I'm really blessed, Daniil, around where we are and what she's been able to give each one of us, including myself. And I've got so much to go back on, and I have stories for days.
That is such a wonderful and profound way to answer that question of how do you keep drawing from a source, because absolutely it was like she had packed in that time as much as she could, not just for herself but so she could give it straight back. I never thought of it that way. It's such a nourishing, continued supportive role to lift ourselves up so we can keep
Mhm.
serving and supporting around us.
I must tell you something, maybe to build on that, right? When we first let everyone know that mom had passed, and I kind of shared my story, the number of people that shared the exact same story made it unbelievable. How could Sandy Mohonathan be that magnanimous? How could she have touched this many people around the world concurrently? What kind of dark magic was this that she could make that much time? But there are very few people that could tell you that Sandy would not make time. And I think that's the legacy. And you think about your earlier question, like, what do I take away? Well, the lessons are there. Be kind always. You got to make the time. And I think that's the journey we're on today, Daniil, that we need to take the lessons we've learned. And we are the ones that are here on this earth. We get to choose every day how we show up with passion and purpose. We get to choose whether to be kind. And it's worth just saying to your audience today that the lessons of Sandy don't end with her passing. They live through all of us. We are her supporters. We are followers. We are the disciples. And we are what it looks like when Sandy's had a role and a touch in who we are and grooming in our careers.
Absolutely. So well said. And that's a legacy continued, right? When you reflect and you realize that we are pieces of this legacy. She touched you and she had an impact on you, which is, like you're saying, it is magnanimous. What kind of force is this? She really taught us how, and it is such an inspiring way to keep reminding ourselves the kindness, the love, the purpose, the expansion, the extension. Give it, right? That is what makes a life fulfilled. The I saw such a beautiful saying, and somebody states is your legacy is every life that you touch. And that for me speaks volumes to exactly what you've said. And it is inspiring. And it wasn't just through the big gestures, right? Like you said, making time for people is such a gift to be able to consciously live a life to inspire. And it could be through softness, it could be through the tough love, of which we know there was a lot and it was necessary. I reflect on that often. It could be, through the gentle, but powerful moments in all that she gave in that authenticity. So if you could recall for us a moment of mom's kindness that inspired you to see yourself, your work, and the world differently, and how this supported you to further inspire others. What I'm asking you essentially is, what is the secret to your success? Because your story, and you we're scratching the surface, is one of a marvel. So What would you share with our listeners?
So what's the secret formula? Is that the question, right?
Let's put it down to that.
So what's the formula? Well, I think a couple of things, and I'll just kind of maybe talk about in facets of my life.
Yeah.
I think I think as a father and as a husband, I think Sandy and her relationship with Claude, which was a really strong partnership, gave us great inspiration as to the kind of wives and husbands and partners that we should be. And we've all had the ability to watch these two people go about their lives for, what would have been a long, long time, some 40 years, right? So we've got that lens. I think it also then distills into who you are in the business world. And the word distill is quite important because one of the things that Sandy taught me is that you have one life. There is no work and there is no personal, there's one life. And you got to find a way to figure out who these core values are. Sandy's book of values, what are those things? And how do you spend your time expanding on those things in all facets of your life? Because you have one life to live. And I must echo what you said earlier. When your time on earth is gone, like Sandy's has, these conversations tell us that Sandy's legacy is real, that she leaves behind not just the sadness we feel in our hearts, but the impact that she made. So, what do I take away into the person I am as a leader? I think one, I am a people centric leader, right? I try really hard to put people at the center of how I lead. Sandy was the person that knew everybody. I try to be that person at work. I know everyone's name. I try to know everyone's name. And I tried my very best to put them at the center of who we are. The very culture we have in the organization I run is people centric. I want the people to decide where we're going. I want the people to wake up and come to work and feel that financial inclusion can be solved in our lifetime. So if you look at the acronym Lift Up and you look at Sandy's life, Lift Up is Sandy Mohonathan. And if I look at the two or three things that I believe are the formula in my experience of having done well in my current role is one, I created clarity of vision and purpose. You called it passion earlier, but vision and purpose. I know when I wake up in the morning that I'm looking to solve a bigger problem for my family, for my community. Specifically, if you come from an impoverished community, it is easy to close your eyes and manifest the obligation and the privilege we have to lead. But by having clarity that the job is more than the money and the revenue, it's about impact on community, it's about expanding your legacy. That's a key thing I've learned, and mom has helped me figure it out. In fact, we can talk about it a bit later, maybe, but when I chose to leave Accenture after almost 2 decades, it made mom cry. But when we spoke about why I was doing it, it was about that passion and that purpose. And then the second element is around putting people around you. We call this followership. Danielle, mom taught me to build teams around me, right?
Mm.
Build a group of people, your supporters, your warriors that will go to battle with you. You could spend days counting Sandy's supporters and Sandy's warriors. I strive to build followership because followership gives us leverage, gives us amplification of what's in our hearts and our minds. And the final thing is what we call culture. Culture is saying to us that we believe in the people and the people make it possible. And so something simple that I did, Danielle, when I started the business, I actually disbanded the structures that kept us apart and said to the people, you come together, you create the business that you want to wake up and come to every day. And we call this movement Harambe. Harambe is a Swahili word meaning all pull together. And I want them to all pull together. I want us all to believe. And I believe that the secret of being a successful leader, it isn't about the leader. It's about inspiring those that choose to follow you and enabling them to be more than they thought they could be. The same belief that Sandy had in me, I need to have in them. And I got to find a way to enable them to be more than their hearts and their dreams thought they could be. The legacy is when you're not on this earth anymore, people remember the chances you gave them, the empowerment you gave them, and how you helped them be more than their dreams dared them to be.
That's such a multiple pole drop moments that you've shared there. And a couple of things I want to draw out was purpose is consistent in life, right? So your choice in your life partner, right? Your the person, yes, it's a choice. The way that you create your warrior tribes, right? The people that are going to speak for you in the rooms that you aren't in, the the impact that you make, the disbanding that you might need to undertake and do in order to bridge. I love the word harambe. I love that you've used that and cultivated it. I've loved how you shared that it's about the people, right? You are in service, and to never forget that. And once we all go, because we're all going to, how does that continue without us, right? And there was a question I was going to ask you about, you know, when days get really heavy for you, because I'm pretty sure in your world that's a reality. You've answered that question. You've got your warrior teams and forces set up because this is what we were coached to do. We're not an island, right? It takes a team and a collective. So you answered that without me asking. Thank you in advance. Um, I'm going to move on to the next letter, fostering growth and harmony. And one of mom's greatest gifts. I've shared that mom was HR and HR was mom. Like we're saying, when you find your purpose and your place in this world, there's no separation. It transcends into everything that you do and how you live and who you are and the fabric of your values, your morals, and your DNA. It's consistent throughout, and she could spot people long before anybody else could, or they could spot themselves. And that is so testament to your journey and your story that you've shared, the fraction of it that you've shared, right? And she didn't just open doors, she walked through them, and she walked holding your hand until she knew that the day that Naik is now ready to flee the nest that was Accenture to his next journey. Yes, she cried, but I'm pretty sure she was holding that door wide open for you to go, right, it's time. And she nurtured you with growth and intention and patience and vision. And that's so evident in the remarkable life and achievements that you have have created for yourself and those around you. And the story's not done yet, right? So my next question to you, Mr. CEO, Sandy's under sun. Who the favorite is between Brett and you, I'm not even going to go there. But um, in saying that mom left every space better than how she found it, how do you continue to do this in your life? Again, as a husband, as a father, as a brother, as a son, as a CEO.
I think there's no perfect answer, and I would say that it's a work in progress because by no means am I perfect. I think in many regards I'm failing, but I think the point about the journey we're on is one that says we got to try every day to be. I actually have this really bad English expression about we should be more better than the day before. And I use it often. So I think every day it's about trying to be a better dad, a better father, a better husband, a better boss, a better partner. It's about trying to be better, trying to be kinder every day. And I think there's no points lost, Daniil, for trying just a little bit more than yesterday. So if there's a perfect playbook, I haven't found it. But what I can tell you though is I try to spend a bit more time reflecting on where I am and holding up this mirror that tells me how I'm doing relative to where I should be or where I've come from. I think the concept of stop, pause, and reflect, right? It's a powerful thing to leave with the audience because if you don't spend time reflecting on the journey you've navigate, how do you make bigger, bolder choices? How do you make different choices? Because if you keep doing what you've been doing, then the outcomes are highly predictable and the world that we want in, the world that Sandy wanted for you to Neil, for me, for you, for Brett, for all of us, is the one where we could realize the fullest of our potentials. And you can both attest that mom always wanted the best for us. I think the challenge, though, is to realize it's not meant to be easy. In fact, there are more people than tell you, no, Daniel, it's not possible. And I would say to you, it's even harder to find those that inspire you and to foster and want to lift you up. But those people do exist. And to maybe deal a point that you mentioned earlier, this is not meant to be easy. You can't talk about this to the people you work with, but you can find people that are your confidants for life, like Sandy was to me, where we didn't talk often sometimes. It could be a small WhatsApp or just to listen to what's going on. I think for the audience to seek out just one or two true people that have your back all day long. They'll give you a ear when you need it to give you the hard feedback. I think that's what makes this real. But is there a perfect playbook to do anything? There's not. The best playbook is just to be fervent in your belief that the world should be a better place and that you have a role to play as a father, as a husband, as a leader, as an African, wherever you are in the world, to be frank with you. But if you have the belief and you take the belief and you put execution against that, because I could believe all day long and sit and do nothing. I think, at least for me, I believe that the Africa I am in should be better for all its Africans. I believe that the world I leave behind, the world that you leave behind, should realize its fullest potential. If I couple that belief at the purpose level with how I show up every day, I'm trying my damnest to
Mm.
be more better than yesterday and try to make an impact that will last as part of my legacy. I hope that makes sense.
It does. Nothing is perfect. That makes perfect sense in its imperfections of how you have answered this question, in that nothing is perfect. But there is something truest to what you're shared, in that if you are stop, pause, reflecting, it's such a great approach to life. And it's an important thing to adopt as part of your lifestyle, your habits. You are able to interrogate, how do we do it much more better, right? How do you ensure that it is incrementally better? Because nothing and no one is perfect. I feel the concept of failure is a reflection point to go, right, how do I make it much more better? Right.
Mm.
And that is a superpower. That in itself, and again, you shared it, it's so important to know who your people in your corner are, to have them, to nurture those relationships and those bonds. That is key. It is. So you've answered the question perfectly. Thank you. On a not so, or a little bit more of the not so glamorous side, um, of being a CEO, right? There are times where I'm sure you have to make incredibly tough decisions that keep you up at night, right? That could shake your peace and steal from your peace of mind, as it were. Are you able to please share a moment with us where you had to make an incredibly tough decision or call, and how mom helped you to navigate that? Just in terms of what are some of the key long lasting legacy perspectives that she would support you with, to zoom out and go, right, here's how you could take this on in a long term perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are many stories, and I think as much as mom loved me, like she loved you and Brett and many other people, she would give you the hard feedback you needed when you needed it. And there's something I've learned actually from a former boss of mine that said, there's we always go into situations, Daniel, where there's things that we want to hear. But actually, what we should go into the conversation asking is, what do I need to hear? And I think mom had this ability to let you talk, talk, talk. Okay, that's lovely. You now said what you wanted to hear from me. Now let me tell you what you need to hear, because I love you. It comes from a deep sense of respect for our partnership. Let me tell you what it is. So I've had a few times when I've gone to mom. I'm just thinking of a few quick stories. I think when I first started my role at TransUnion, probably two quick stories. One story was the decision to leave everything I knew for 19 years and come to TransUnion. The only person I told was Sandy, nobody else. And it's such a big thing, Lee Naik leaves Accenture. And even though mom was Accenture, we had that relationship. Mom would say, okay, let's talk through it. And in the end, probably the biggest thing from that is mom helped me figure out why I was doing this. It wasn't just about title. Is it about amplifying your impact? Is it about getting more What was this thing? And sometimes when you're about to make a tough, tough decision, and it's interesting because arguably, like, what is Sandy doing giving this guy advice? But our relationship transcended the work. She was able to help me hold up a very objective kind of vision board for all the scenarios and help me think through, if you did this, this is what I meant. If you did this, this is what I mean. How do you think about your legacy? What are you trying to achieve? This is where you are on your age continuum. And it's quite funny because this conversation happened to happen in the year that I was about to turn 40. And as you're well aware, your treadmills trick you up. Do I enter 39 or do I enter 40 on the treadmill? And it's interesting because I was about to go through a new decade of change and this big opportunity came up. And I think mom was able to hold up and a very objective mirror to say, Lee, let me help you navigate this. Um, of course, I love you regardless of the choice you make. Let's work through this. So that's one quick story. The second story is when I joined the organization as an incoming CEO from outside the organization. It's quite interesting because I think I'm quite a likable person and many people like me. But now I'm in an organization that's been around for over 100 years. They don't know me. And I really want to be liked, like everybody does. We all want to be liked. It's a it's part of a hierarchy of needs, as you'd say. And it was quite difficult because I came in as an agent of change from the global organization. And as I was navigating many changes that I had to make to an organization that didn't know me, I think mom provided this equal soundboard to, okay, that makes sense. Have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? Where's your head at? And someday she just called me to check, how did it all pan out, Daniil? Like, how did it work? How are you feeling? Because people don't realize that these things are hard and sometimes you can't talk about everybody. And some days mom would call and just say, how are you doing? And I think that in itself is a superpower. Talking about superpowers, the one thing I've learned over my almost 3 decades of working is that calm is your superpower. Life is meant to be tough, it's meant to be difficult. And Sandy taught me early on about being calm. Because not saying I am calm, I'm quite over the top generally. Many conditions I should be treated for. But I've learned to compartmentalize, I've learned to try and frame things better. I'm a work in progress. I can't tell you I'm perfect by any means, but I think I've been learning to become calmer in navigating what is a very perilous world that we all have to face every single day.
Love those stories because it's going to move seamlessly into the next letter that's um, together. Is that you were able to do this together. You were able to understand that I'd like to maybe change something you've shared in that being liked is a part, and the Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a part of wanting together to be part of community. That is how we were created as a species, because together we can achieve and do so much more than if we have to sit in isolation. You shared that when you joined this organization that is TransUnion and you nobody, right? You're coming in there completely wide-eyed, that you decided to create Harambe and remove a siloed, potentially approach to together connect and build, to share a culture and a vision. And I believe that you've done that remarkably so far. And I know mom was always proud of you because you were always willing to take that chance on yourself, but knowing that together you could do it and do anything that you had set your mind to, right? And that belief, I'm going to take it back to 1997, that belief that she saw and ignited that hope in you, right, is the same thing that carries a flame when we continue to drop that and see that in anybody and anything around us. And in your journey as a mentor to you, um, how did she, or would you share that she really embodied that as a mentor, a mother figure, a leader? How do you think that she embedded that journey of togetherness in you?
Well, I think I mentioned this a few times, but her ability to be there in the moment and to listen before you're able to give advice or give a perspective is super important. And for many people, people that I recommended, hey, have a chat to Sandy, she would meet random strangers just because I asked her to. And you know exactly that she would do that. And when she met, she would be in that moment. And it's quite interesting because we spoke earlier about who do you confide in. I've got a few mentors that are my peers or my seniors in the industry that I tend to go to when I'm in some kind of conundrum or challenge. I think what I've learned to do as a leader myself, if I manifest what Sandy's taught me, is to have that door open to engagement, for togetherness, have that door open to allow people to come in, right? And to share. Try not make it about you, make it about them, because people aren't coming to hear more of you. They want to get the benefit of experience, but in their context. So develop and hone your listening skills, focus, and develop this hyper relevance. When people think fondly of mom, they don't think of all her achievements. I'd argue they think about how she was there for them when she needed them most. And I can tell you from the thousands of people we've met since mum's passing that have shared similar stories. And it's almost impossible to believe that mum, in her time on this earth, made that much time for people and she gave so generously. So that's the imprint she has on my style. And I'll keep reminding us all that we can only strive to be better every day. There's no perfection in this, but if this podcast helps others to lift up and to be better tomorrow, and I think you have achieved with your dad and your family what you've intended here, because Sandy's role was to spark something in us, to give more, for us to be part of a system. And that fundamentally aligns to my belief that in my lifetime, I want to make an impact on more people. I want us all to have a better life. I want us all to break out of the circumstances like Sandy did, that Lee did, that Shirley Zinn did. We all want to break out. And I think the more we talk about this on platforms like the one you've put together for us, it helps us to get confidence that we can do anything that we want to do.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better. There's so many again points that you've raised, but you know, that ability to be able to walk into any space or room and connect with anybody was a superpower of hers. It came from, I believe, seeing one another as human beings to be able to connect at that level. What you've shared about when we speak to somebody, do we go in feeling that it's about us, going in there with that mentality, or are we there to deeply listen and build the connection and truly be there to hold space and support one another in that way? And I believe that that quality that she had to be able to make the circle bigger, because you're right, when you speak to multiple people, no matter where they come from, what age group, what nationality, what culture, creed, whatever it might be, there's this consistency of connection, right? That universal global citizen was such a core part of her DNA. And I love that she left that with all of us, because you being in the position and the role that you're in, I'm pretty sure that that has supported you to go, right, that is a quality that I take on too, and that I can use not just in my professional capacity, but as a human being. Right. And she would say that there's no such thing as a stranger. It's just a friend that we haven't met or made as yet.
Mhm.
Um, and here's a connection in oh question, apologies, in terms of universal connection. But what do you think? Um, people from all walks of life felt so drawn to her for or about?
If I think about her characteristics that would make her endearing, Sandy had a face that said, "Come talk to me. I'm going to be your friend. I'm not a stranger." And I had the privilege of knowing her in many circles. I'd meet her when I came in. My typical flight. I'd land, early in the morning or later, and the hair was an absolute mess. But that was your Sandy for you. And I'd pick on how she looked. Doesn't matter. It never mattered to her. I knew her when we sat around a senior leadership table, and the two of us would make funny faces at each other. I knew that Sandy. I knew the Sandy that would be hard on me because I was doing a silly thing. I was going the wrong direction. Or she was a Sandy that would tell me, listen, it'll be okay. I think Sandy was many things to many people. And I think what is really interesting about Sandy is she was able to connect deeply with any person of any type. I remember how fondly my mom talks about Sandy, as limited as their connections were. Or when my mom would come into conversation, Sandy would ask about other people. I think that's who she was. She genuinely cared. And I think the one recurring theme, which I believe will come out as a theme in all of your conversations, is that Sandy dared us to try and be kind all the time. Be kind always. There's got to be something that we pass on as a legacy of these podcasts because we've got to inspire those that Sandy has left behind and those that they're youngsters that grew up under us, my kids, your cousins, your nieces. There are many poor that are waiting to be inspired, and not all of them have had these lessons, Daniel, that we've had. So the more we share, the more we amplify. And for me, that is what this universal connection is, right? The more we connect, the more we amplify. And I liked the expression I used earlier. We need to strive to have a better life for all our people. And that's universal. That's altruistic. Think
Mm.
more than myself. And if you get that partially right, you've already amplified the impact. If it's just about me, then I believe fervently that we've actually lost already. We cannot do anything. We're one of 8 billion people. So universal connection is amplified through mechanisms and platforms like this. We need to keep giving and don't ask for anything in return. When you need it, Daniel, your karma will come back to you. Give only because you can give, not because you've been forced to give. That is a large part of what makes a true connection universally versus you pretending to want to connect universally.
That's such a beautiful way to answer that question. Thank you. Um, and that was I really felt that deeply because to the next letter of P, passion, it wasn't a tick box exercise for her. It wasn't here for brownie points. It wasn't here for a gain of some kind. It was authentic, right? It was because she deeply cared and she was passionate about that care. And I think maybe if I could ask you, we're going to, off the top of your head, what do you think gave her that fire? And how did that passion influence you?
My kind of personal view is that Sandy's origin story is quite similar to mine, right? If you go back to where she grew up and where I grew up, very, very similar, with different ages, but very similar. I think in her heart of hearts, she's a person that broke out of her circumstance. No one had written a story for the Sandy that we all knew and loved, right? And love to this day. She broke every rule. She put in all the effort. And I always talk to Neil about this triumvirate of hard work, good luck, and opportunity. Put the hard work. Opportunity may find you, and luck may find you along the way. But Sandy was able to find this triumvirate that came together and that allowed her to set the pathway in place to get here. But she is an anomaly in the bigger scheme of things. Arguably, I am an anomaly. Many people that you will talk to on these podcasts are anomalies. And so the passion that she had was she believed that she could inspire us to be the greatest that we could be, regardless of what the odds were against us. She believed that we could redefine and rewrite our destiny. And for that, I'm grateful. And I think that allowed her to keep the passion alive, to make a difference while she can. And even in her passing, she continues to make that difference. So that passion is endless, but it comes from a point where if you know what bad looks like, then you don't want others to be there. You want others to have a better existence. And I think that's an indomitable burning platform to keep that fire and passion alive.
On point, because it was the reason, one of the many reasons deeply that drove her is because she never wanted anybody else to have to experience that insofar as she could help it. Coming from the township that is Chatsworth that the both of you did, the environmental impact and influences being these anomalies, you had a driving force, or still do, for how you want to support others to be inspired and to light that spark in each of us to go, but you can. I have. You can. It is possible. And I there's a signature question that we have on this podcast about who lifted you up today and how are you lifting others? And I'm going to ask you that question, Anna, to conclude this absolutely depthful and thought-provoking conversation, all that you've shared so freely. Thank you.
Let me talk about it quickly in three parts. I think both my mothers, my real mom, Pat Naik, and my other mom, Sandy Mohonathan, played a key role. In my early upbringing, my mom was the person that held up the mirror of keeping on that straight and narrow to try and beat the odds. The odds are predetermined, living in poverty, limited job opportunities. I was never meant to study. I was meant to have, a predictable job in a blue collar setting. That was destined for most people that grew up in the place that Sandy and I grew up. So my mom, Pat Naik, together with my dad, kept us in that straight and narrow, journey one. And then journey two was meeting mom, where I would argue that mom found me at that point of hard work, good luck, and opportunity. I didn't have to be there that day, Daniel. I was there. And so I fervently believe that these two mums got me going on the journey. In my career, in both the organizations, there's a few leaders that challenged me to be more than I was. And in few of these occasions, in fact, in many of these occasions, when I took that jump to jump in and say, I will follow, because I was a follower and a disciple, I was able to be lifted up and even accelerated. Mom would always, I'm sure mom has told you, I was one of the youngest partners at Accenture. And that's because I pushed hard because I wanted to be better than the cards that told me these fortune telling cards. I beat those cards, but it had to come with hard work and good luck and opportunity. And when opportunity presents itself, you don't say no to it. You stop and you consider. So that's the kind of how I got to where I am. In terms of what I'm trying to do to lift up people, I think in a couple ways. Arguably, I do too much and I should do maybe try and do a little bit less in a more focused manner. But at an organization level, we work with lots of schools to, at a structural level, improve grassroots education. If we can drive the feeding system that feeds careers, specifically from the diversity of our communities, that's going to be key. Secondly, we have quite a few programs where we're starting to boost interns and graduates to bring them in the system. So that's quite cool. The one that we developed quite unique in TransUnion was a future leaders program. Many people talk about a Gibbs program or some other WITS university type program. We actually found that there's a need to lift up the base capabilities of people. So we actually created a structured program to lift up people so they can get to their potential. Sometimes you're given a glass ceiling. My view was here's a hammer, here's a chisel, break the glass ceiling, here's a ladder to get you through the ceiling onto the next level. So we created programs to empower future leadership. So structurally, that's what I've done within the organization. at a personal level, what am I doing? Well, whether it's formal or informal, I have quite a few mentorship relationships where I mentor people within our organization and within the industry. And I try where possible. It could be a half an hour conversation, could be a 5 minute conversation, but I try to make myself available for others that have put in the hard work. They're hoping and praying for good luck and the opportunity to be mentored and coached. I'm trying my very best to make myself available to lift up others. And I think in the end, if people have the passion and they've got the hard work, and if we can create enabling platforms, whether it's structurally within the organization or whether it's with private sector partnerships, or whether it's individually, then I believe it comes together for the betterment of community. And in the end, I am of the firm belief, back to the point on passion, that in my lifetime, and your life, Neil, we need to find a way to make this world a better place for as many people as we can.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Again, I felt that, and it's practical. You've shared practical, heartfelt, authentic experience stories, perspective. You've shared it in its raw form, but also in a way that our listeners, I believe, will be able to take so much from this. And I know it will inspire them to lift up themselves and others around them. I want to say the hugest thank you for making the time, for giving of yourself so freely today, for all that you shared in this conversation, and for being a big brother to Great and myself, and another son to Sandy and Claude, because I know they're incredibly proud of you, not just for the human being that you are, Lee, but for how you serve and have chosen to give your purpose away so freely. So thank you, genuinely. And to Dad, Claude Mohonathan, and Pranay for the ideation of this beautiful legacy podcast. Thank you. To the man behind the lens, Vic. We couldn't do this without you. So, to you as well, a heartfelt thank you. And to every listener that takes the time to tune in to every one of our episodes, please keep sharing with us. Please keep following. Please send through any recommendations you have. But please do continue to live to lift up, because what else? Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time.